Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm really excited. I have a special guest today, and I'm also talking to your channel as well, JP. So
Yeah.
everyone from my community, this is JP, John Patrick Morgan. John, I know you've done so much work with Steve Hardison. I know you mentored under him. I know you mentored under Rich Litvin. So anyone who's willing to invest that much money in themselves and their work, I have an incredible amount of respect for. So my community, this is JP, is a really awesome human being. We just met about 3 minutes ago, but I already can say things coming from it. It feels good. And my name's Jared, and I've been in Michael Neal's community. I've been doing this work for about 4 years. And so it's an honor and a delight to meet your community as well too, JP.
Awesome, Jared. Thanks for having me, dude. That's like I said, this whole experience. I mean, yeah, we just met in video, but just to acknowledge you publicly, like I get asked to do interviews and stuff, and sometimes it's clunky and people aren't really clear on what they want. And every step of the way, it's just been it's felt really good. Like when you go in a nice like store or like nice clothes shop and the person, like just the whole experience is nice. So
Yeah.
once again, acknowledge you for just creating a really welcoming and fun experience.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I'm excited to get into this. So I titled this How to Build a Transformative Practice. And really the best way that I look at building practice is obviously creating relationship, creating trust, but then also offering an incredible amount of value. And for me as a coach, and I'm excited to hear your position, I'm sure we have some similarities and differences, but really just offering as much value and impact as possible to the person's external world, but also to their internal world as well too. So I don't know, man, where do you want to start with this?
Let's start right there. What's this? Tell me more about what you mean. Like, what does it mean to offer value?
So I guess for me and my experience, and I see value as really being how much impact you're offering to a human being, internally and externally. That's at the core where I start from.
Yeah. So I mean, I relate to it. The language I use is power. So I've always been fascinated with power since I was a little kid. Like my shadow is the fear of not being powerful, essentially. So it's also my gift. It's what I orient around. Freedom, love, and power are kind of my main things. But the power thing really came from my dad was a cop. He's 6'6". I'm like 5'8". He was huge. His same name. He was Big John. I was Little John. So right from the get-go, it was like, I want to be powerful. And so when I was young, of course, it was like trying to be physically powerful, learning martial arts and accessing power that way. And then intellectually, like in school, getting good grades. And then when I got into business, like learning how to sell and like sell the most in the real estate business when I was at first there. But it's become more nuanced throughout my life and like with the spiritual path. But like, I think a lot of times people like go on a spiritual path, and they move away. It's like, oh, power is a bad word.
Yeah.
To me, I think it's probably because I studied physics at university. So I have an understanding of power from a simply mathematical perspective, which is the change made to a system divided by the time it takes to make that change. And so I've always looked at it as a very neutral term, as it's just a physical thing. So what's the difference that I'm making, and how long is it taking me to make that difference? Now, if it's like bad, then it's like a fear-based power. But it could also be a good, like, love is a power as well. So but so as those nuances have come as I've gotten older, and I'm fascinated with helping people to increase their power. And for me, that means helping people to make more of a difference in less time, that's why I brought it up, because when you're talking about offering value, that's what I'm hearing.
I love that. That's awesome. I have an Art of Transformation class that I'm doing right now. And the premise that we're working under is, how can you go as vertically deep within a human being as possible, as quickly as possible? Like, how can you get into that inner world? And and I test this sometimes. I test it a lot of times. I'm by the belief that like the inner world is connected to the outer world and the outer world inner, but at the same time, I still test that theory as well. And so far I kind of go back and forth between it. So I don't know where I sit with that, but I do know that if we can go at, being a transformational presence, if we can go into a person's inner world and know how to use challenging energy and compassionate energy, then we can create a really big impact in their internal world, which naturally seems to shift their external world, at least from my experience. So I really loved what you said there about just really looking at it from that practical physics view. Like, how much change can you have in a system in the shortest amount of time span, and like that equals power. I think that's a really great practical way, and I never really thought of it that, but I think like in the class with some of the individuals, they're telling me like, yeah, I just walk around and I'm triggering people, and it's like that's, I think, what happens when you're in your powers. You do trigger people, and learning to contain triggers, like that's a science.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like I mean, you said something that you said. It's like challenge energy, compassion energy. The metaphor that I use is like, again, it comes from physics. I'll drop some equation, PV equals nRT, which is like a thermodynamics equation, right? Which is essentially pressure times volume is equal to some constant times temperature. And that's essentially like how a pressure cooker works. You know, if you want to make bone broth in a slow cooker, it takes like 48 hours, but you put the same exact ingredients in a pressure cooker, tighten the lid down, and in 45 minutes, you can have the same result. So why is that? It's because you've got more pressure, which means greater intensity. And so that's really about containment. And so with the higher your containment, the higher your intensity can be. And so I don't look at it as necessarily like an ebb and flow. To me, it's like, as I bring the compassion energy up, I can bring the challenge energy up, and they actually work together. So if there's ever somebody that's like, oh, I'm triggering people, it's like, well, it's not like pull back. It's like crank up the compassion in parallel. Like how, and so in simple pragmatic terms, how could you just love this person more? How could you help them feel safer? Same as like it is in intimacy, right? Especially between a man and a woman, or masculine and feminine energy. Like, how can you create safety so that this can be held, this possibility?
Yeah, I love that, man. That's really great. One of the things that we've been talking about in the class recently has been, just really like even when you're going to push or be challenging with someone, briefing that ahead of time and say, like sometimes I'll say, hey, are you okay if I be an asshole? Like, seem to be an asshole, like from a loving place. Like, hey, are you okay if I push on this and crack on this, and building that safe space with permission, but then also going all out. I mean, I've had coaching sessions where I've yoked people up, and I don't think I've had anyone yoke me up, but I mean, I did it from a safe space, and I knew that the other person could take it, and that's where I needed to go. So I think really, I love what you said about having them two work in parallel and tangent, and I that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, they're not a trade-off. It's like when I used to teach guys, when I first started in coaching, I was in dating coaching, and my wife and I had a company called The Magnetic Man, and we would teach guys around creating authentic connection with women, and they would be oscillating between this like willingness to express desire and this fear that would have them hold back. And it was like, and so what we said is, it's like the pulling back doesn't need to be from fear. You could pull back out of compassion. You could see that she's not comfortable, and doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It's just like giving her space. And so we've got the yin yang here. So it was like, you actually want to fold in like compassion and desire into each other, and just keep, and it's like, bring compassion and desire up, express your desire, express your compassion. And it's actually, the more you can bring both of them all the way up. And what are those both forms of? Love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's all love, but it's in just kind of different forms.
Yeah. I love that, man. That's great. Well, John, I'm curious, what do you think when it comes to like going back to the power and your own journey with power? Because I mean, mine was very similar. It was, I was in the Marine Corps. I've been benching like a gazillion pounds and squatting until my butt falls out. Like, and from there it was, same thing with business. But eventually, like, there's, my experience at least has been like, there's a collapsing back to just like personal power and what that is. And I see it as just really creating life on your terms, I guess, and okay, these are my value systems. This is what I'm about. How do you define, I guess, like personal power now from that journey that you've gone on?
Yeah. Well, first of all, power has gone, it's become more nuanced, like this idea that it's just about making a difference. It can be from love. It can be from fear, that piece, like the spiritual kind of evolution. Then it's a kind of a more crude, like if I have power over you, then that's power, like when I was younger, and it was like from physical power to like intellectual, and then like money and stuff. But now it's like, yes, there's the power of like the power to create my own freedom and to create what I want in my life. And that's a certain level of growth that I feel like I have achieved and continue to achieve. But I'm actually, my interest is growing into the power to create beyond this idea of myself as being the primary function or the primary things of importance. So like there's something greater than me. There's something greater than, the idea of the Tao or of a God or spirit or something that I'm an instrument of, more so than like, I'm the thing and what can I create for me? And this is just, I think, a natural evolution, right? Like Nietzsche talks about in this book, that Zarathustra, about like going from the camel, which is to carry the burden of society, actually do work, but like what society wants of you, then evolving beyond that to like the lion, which is like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do my thing. Yeah. And to beyond the lion is like the child, the creator, which is like, there are no rules. I'm not going to do what society says or react to it. I'm just going to create from the infinite. And then I talked about this earlier in my coaching today. The Harvard psychologist Robert Keegan, I love his model of adult psychological development. So the idea that, so this process, like the social self is like and then from there you got the self-authoring mind, which I think is a huge stage of liberation. I think a lot of personal growth is about helping people to author their own self. Yeah. But to me, what I'm really fascinated in now is like what the self-transforming mind, which is like that stage beyond that people reach in later life, maybe elder life, typically. But it's like that. It's transcendent of the idea that of I as the most important thing. And so the way that I'm meeting that in my life, like to make it more like pragmatic, is the evolution of my work, where I'm going to live, what my lifestyle is going to be, the type of fitness that I'm going to do. I stopped looking only inwardly to my own personal preferences and values as the determining factor. I've come to a place where even my values are just something that have unfolded through choices that I made, but circumstances, right? And so what if the things that my clients are asking from me, what if that's the universe unfolding too? And what if that's the direction I'm going to go? And it starts to feel, and there's even more of a flow when my creation starts, when I'm trying not to go along with everybody or trying to do my own thing in defiance of everybody, but just being like, what's right there? Yeah, I guess this is who I am and who I'm becoming, and that's what we're doing.
I love that. Yeah, man. I would. It sounds like it's the intersection of the I and the we, and it's just allowing that to unfold. And it's so funny because I see people in both. Like I see my own past where I was in both. I come from at least I think I do. I'm not taking this on in the moment. I really do come from a similar space where at first it started like, okay, we'll get everything in society and I'm going to I have this great plan for it and I'm going to impact the world. And then it was the other way around where I saw, I was being created and now I just see the flux between the two. It's okay, I guess this is what I'm doing and this is it. And okay, cool. I know where this is going. But there's still, it's almost like you're steering the ship, but also you're recognizing that the waves are steering the ship as well too, and kind of working in tangent and flow with it. And I think that's a really cool way to experience a really, I don't know if this, maybe just a life of flow, interconnection with the I and the we. I was talking with this about another client the other day. They're doing a bunch of YouTube videos and stuff. And they asked me, they say, do you feel the collective when you release your videos? And I was like, that's a great question. And I said, yeah, I do. Sometimes when I make a video, I'll feel okay, this isn't going to connect with too many people. And then other times it'll be like, wow, I can feel the subtle energy of the collective or people coming in and creating me and creating my thoughts and my emotions and how I release. And it's like being in the interplay of life, I think. And flow of inner and outer world.
Yeah, I was writing the other day, and I was just that the thought was, there's not a single thought that I have that's my own. It's which is the opposite of most of my I'm a student of new thought, right? That whole possibility that we can decide where our attention goes and we can orient our thinking that can habituate patterns that creates energy, that creates forms in the world. And that's all about really having agency with your thinking. And from the idea that you can actually create a unique thought. And it's that's an aspect of new thought, the philosophy, that I don't actually buy into. I think that we are an echo of yesterday's thinking, which is an echo of the conversation I had with Jared a week ago, which is an echo of an echo of an echo of an echo of it. It's like just goes on and on. And so like the illusion is thinking that this thought I'm having is mine, you know, and and it's not like slipping into like nihilism where I'm like, oh my God, I have nothing.
Right. Cause people get this there. Yeah.
On the wall, you saw the samurai sword, and it's like the way a samurai holds a sword is not too tight that they can't wield it powerfully, but not too loose that if somebody strikes it, they'll drop it. And so that's like the for me, the place to hold this idea that my thoughts are mine. Right. It's like there's a sweet spot in there, but it's like the both and. That's why I have this. That's why I love Taoism, and why I have that on the wall as well.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I love that view. I love just having that relationship to your thinking and your experience. It's, I mean, another good, I always like the metaphor of the bamboo. Like the bamboo is, it's powerful. They use it to build structures, and it's strong enough to build structures, but it's also flexible enough to, you know, to use to, it's bendable. Like, and I think that way of being it's just a powerful way of being. When I was trained to be a Marine, and like there were so many times where I broke after that because it's just so rigid.
Because of the rigidity, you mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what do you mean you broke?
Well, like it was just broke to a deeper level. So it was like, oh, I can't like they'll train, the military conditions people to be like very, very robotic. And so, I mean, I broke to a deeper part of myself, but at the time it like that felt like it was breaking because it was just so much rigidity. And then it was interesting from there, it became more fluid and like soft. And then eventually it kind of balanced out where it's like, oh, I can elicit the power of strength and warrior, move and make things happen quickly. And then also the experience of softness and compassion. And I think that's, I mean, maybe that's our natural state. I'm not really sure. That's a pretty big general claim, but
yeah, I don't know what that means, natural state.
Just when we come into like the world, like how we're born. I don't even know.
Well, I know just because I've got a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old, and right now I'm with my 6-month-old watching Game of Thrones, and like he's just like head's getting chopped off, and he's like, you know, this stuff. You know, we learn these ways of being for sure. Like, you know, soft and hard and up and down and good and bad. It's just I think that because our minds are so interconnected, and every human that's born into this world ends up having so many similarities, we just assume it must be born that way. But he's soaking it up, right? He's noticed that when my 4-year-old walks in and the head gets chopped off at Game of Thrones, he's like, and we're like, so he's like, oh, I guess I should when that happens. So you start, you know, you get it. You get it.
The imprint.
Yeah. It just stacks.
JP, do you think like those imprints, like, do you think those stick, or can you drop them quickly? Like what's your thoughts on that? And I mean, I'm not a father, but I grew up in a pretty big family, and I raised my 2 younger sisters. And so I could see like that imprints and how life gets created. But I also think that we can drop those pretty quickly if we know how to. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I think it's not a black and white situation. Like, what is an imprint? It's a neurological conditioning. It's protein synthesis and synapses. You know, it's just tissue. It's connections inside the body. And so, of course, everything can change in the body. But the more deeply they're conditioned, the more that path is worn, the more energy it might take to change that. And so that energy might be mounted over a period of time of reconditioning, or you might have a significant event of healing, you know, something somatic that can do it more rapidly. And so I think a lot of people get caught in debates that are just unnecessary because there's nuance to it. And so, you know, is it like that every single one could always be changed? Well, that sounds like a totality, as well as the idea that none of them can. I mean, like, I just don't live in the world of either of those really. So I know enough about my own experience to know that I've had specific contexts in the world that trigger specific emotional responses in me that just don't anymore. Right. And I know there's other places where specific context, specific emotion, I've done work, somatic work, all different work, and it's less, but it still happens. Right. And so maybe I haven't figured it out yet or haven't gotten the thing. That's total. I mean, I like that idea, right? Because it keeps me curious. But it's kind of so yes, no, maybe all of it.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
All of the above. Yeah.
That's why I love these conversations.
Yeah.
Well, JP, do you think, like, I guess when it comes to the coaching specifically, like, what are the different ways that and that's such a general term, but I mean, what do you see the different schools of thought or the different modalities that you see out there in the coaching world and the self-development world, and what do you think is the most powerful, I guess?
I don't know, because I like the way that I'm kind of like I always like have said that I came into this industry sideways, like from the side door. Like I feel like I snuck in, like, wait a minute, who's this guy? He didn't come up through the ranks. He didn't, like, and the reason that is because I came into it with, like, as a performance magician, and I was interested in the way the mind represents reality and how our communication creates our experience of reality. So I was a hypnotist and a psychological magician. So I would talk to people and have them see and experience and feel something that they thought was real, but wasn't actually occurring.
Right.
And so, like, and then I learned about the coaching world, and it's like, oh, I can use this not just to give people a fun time, but I can use it to actually help people in their life. That's when I found deeper purpose and moved away from performance and into coaching. And then that led me into the ranks part, where people would go through their own personal healing. I came in like, I'm happy, I have success, I've traveled the world, I have a girlfriend, everything's cool. And then my girlfriend was like, yeah, but everybody's got stuff. And I'm like, wait, I'm not the happiest guy I know? Shit, I have to stop saying that. And then, like, so I opened up and I actually got the growth, but I kind of got into it through already helping people in the way that I still do. And so I still do the essence of what I started it, which is like the way a person uses their mind creates their experience of life, and it creates their attitude, their actions, their efficacy, their state of being, everything. It comes through that. But I understand that there are other arts that I've immersed myself in that can be very important for people, especially people that have a deeper trauma. Like this, I use the word somatic, like different breathwork modalities and the spiritual men's work that I've done, like, being on the floor, kicking and screaming, hyperventilating, being, regressed back to a time when I was a kid. I've done all that stuff too. I don't do that in my work, but I do appreciate those things. I just happen to have an interest on the way a person constructs reality using their mind. And so it started with my, there was the magic piece, but then there's also my spiritual path and becoming aware, becoming mindful of my own inner dialogue. It's like, oh shit, there's somebody in there, back in like 2006 or so. And so folding those two things into each other, helping people to become more and more aware of the subtle dialogue that's happening. And then also to have an influence on the emergence of that dialogue. The metaphor I use a lot, especially for people who are students of the three principles, is, the waves on the ocean, right? Like there's your thinking, your thoughts coming up. And like the goal of the insight of the principles or of Buddhism or different modalities is to be able to see that. And when you can see it, you can actually stop being engaged in it and being tossed around, and you can just witness. And when you witness, the sea calms. But waves always inevitably come again. And the answer on a lot of these things is like, well, they just come from somewhere outside of us, from source, from universal mind. And I'm like, that's true. And what's also true is that waves on the surface of an ocean are the interplay of the wind and the currents beneath. And so the currents meet the wind and a wave forms. And so to draw that analogy back to the human mind, it's like there are preconditioned neural synaptic connections, imprints, patterns, habits that live in your body as a predisposition, and they meet the winds of circumstance and a thought happens. That's why you can have two people walk into the same room, see the same person in the other side of the room, and have two different thoughts, two different experiences, two different states of being are created. So I'm interested in how can we change the currents of the ocean, so that when the winds blow, we get different waves.
Beautiful. Well, JP, do you think that I get the metaphor, but do you think that comes from like would you say that the winds of change are like in a human's individual experience? Is that like society and other people and just
Yeah, the wind is all that, everything on the outside world.
Right. So they're like the connection, because there's this term, I think Holland, that Ken Wilber uses to describe like the individual being the sum of there's the individual and then there's the totality, and it's all of it. And I think like for me, I know I see when I connect with a person, I'll be like, I don't typically have that thought, and then I'll explore that subjective experience and be like, when I connected with this person, I had that thought. How is that? And you can get lost in it, but the point of it is I think we're all a lot more connected while at the same time individual. And I think honoring both of those realities that's
what I'm saying. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Really powerful. And I think,
I just know, like, I live with the same body in my house that I call my wife for 10 years. Like, seems to be the same one anyway. It looks similar. Right. She seems to agree, or it seems to agree. And yet she can be different people to me depending on what my mind is doing, right? Depending on what thinking I'm having at any moment and what I'm feeling, she can look different. And that's true in the moment. But what's also true is over the continuity of time, the thoughts that tend to arise are habitual. So I can have a moment where I see her one way and a moment where I see another way, and those two different, we get that. But what I'm actually saying is that where I choose to put my attention and what I do on the inside of my mind can actually create my future arisings of feelings and thoughts about her. So I'm interested in like how what I do now creates the rising of thought tomorrow that creates my experience of her tomorrow.
Absolutely. Well, and this is why I like, there's like the spiritual healing communities, like the awakening communities. Then there's coaching. Like I like the future orientation. I think sometimes people get caught in like a healing trap where they're always, past life regression hypnosis, and I love that stuff. Like I've done it all, and it's great. But I think people can get lost there and forget about like how are we creating our experience moment by moment, and then how is that creating what the future is. And even though we can have a concept or an idea of the future, like it's better just to continually, I think, bring the attention back to the present and see how we're creating our future moment by moment instead of kind of always going back to the past. I see a lot of individuals in the healing communities who focus on the past so much that they're missing a created future, or just at least being more empowered in their own life, because they're not focusing on their creative future. They're focused on healing a past that is illusory. So see people get caught up in that, but then I also see other people where they're just kind of and I've been all of them. They get caught up in constantly trying to create a future, avoiding their experience in the here and now. And so it's really just it's a fun thing to talk about, but it's also really cool to just see people in their own individual worlds and see ourselves in the world as well too. It's all really cool.
Caught in the past and lost in the future, I guess those are the common phrases, right? Because it happens for people. I like to think of the past as a way into the present, a deeper way into the present. So whenever I'm having a feeling, I will like inquire within, like, what's going on here? What am I feeling? And it's like, when do I remember feeling that the first time or an early time? And it's like, it's not because I need to go back there, live back there and heal that way. It's because if I can bring up that image, then I have a better sense of what I'm feeling right now. And I don't then lay on some story that, there's a past that it's a lot. It's like, no, the only where the past is right here, but it's active. And so that imagery of what I'm calling the past is really just imagery of the present in this moment that's just outside of my awareness. So I'm not actually going into the past. I'm going into the present. I just look like a little kid because it's active right now.
Mm, mm.
So yeah, go
This-
ahead.
yeah. So JP, this kind of, for me, what this is bringing up is, when I see in my practice, is I'll see, I remember I had one client where we connected, and I literally saw the 15-year-old girl come out. Like, I actually
Mm,
visually saw it. She was an
cool.
older woman, about like 53, 54. And she hired me to expand her business. But then as soon as she hired me, she started like hooking up with a lot of guys. And she was an older woman, and her kids just left the home. And so, there was no judgment around it. I was just curious. I said, you hire me to expand your business, but then you're like dating all these guys and doing all this stuff. Like, I'm just curious, like, what's that really about? And when I asked that question, I saw her, her 15-year-old self come forward. And then I heard this whole story about her father shamed her, from a sexual experience. And long story short, her sexual and her relational development got completely shut down at the age of 15, because there's so much shame and guilt that energetically, like, that part of her development just got hindered. But it was really cool, because in that moment, I like her physical appearance changed. Like, I actually saw the
Wow.
15-year-old girl in front of me that never allowed that. So I really look at human beings like, and this is from my experience, and I'm always willing to drop this in any moment when life shows me a new way. But as like, we all have these different lines of development, like financial development, emotional development, sexual, social, communicational, intellectual, all these different lines of development. And based off of the environment, certain aspects of those either get shut down or supported. And if they get shut down, they don't come back online until they get the support that they need. At least that's been my experience so far. And so, like, when we're talking about the past and the future, and we're bringing all this together, like, it's almost like I see human beings as they have these different areas of development, and if they don't get the support that they need from the environment, like the family, the culture, the society, then that part of their development gets hindered. And until they're in an environment where it is supportive, that part won't come online. What are your thoughts? Yeah, what are your thoughts on this? I'm really
Oh,
curious.
sounds nice. I'd never thought about that way before. I would say I would put a dot 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 on the end of that, and then I would say, and a person's environment is created through their mind and their being. And that doesn't mean that therefore everybody is on their own, autonomous. You create your own environment now. It's like, but like, for example, if I'm going through the world without any understanding that my mind creates my experience, then if something happens out there, that person's just an asshole. And all I can do is either suffer or not have them in my life. And so I can't see the gap, which is like, they're just operating, and I'm creating asshole and putting it on them. And I'm suffering the consequence of that label and that idea, that interpretation. Just like I might with my wife, not asshole, but like, create an idea about her that she's not being there for me, something. And then I suffer that, create a different idea, and I have the bliss.
Right.
And so once you can see that, you realize, oh, I'm creating my experience. And then you can extend that onto environments too. Case in point, we left London because we didn't want to live somewhere sunny, and we moved to California. And then a friend of mine wrote this really beautiful article about having left the UK and went to Northern California and then back to the UK. And then she realized that like she was creating the rain, not like where it's like she's making water fall from the sky like a dance, but like the idea of rain is really like the gray and is like the suffering is really what we're talking about of that. And it's like a new relationship to it, same weather, but different experience of it.
Right.
So to bring it back to what you're saying too, it's like, so if it's a certain environment that can create the support for us to do the healing, if an environment is something that's only happening out there, then it's only until I come across those circumstances with my conditioning and patterning that I'll have the support. But if you add on to it the dot, 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 and when a person develops the capacity to create their environment through how they create their own phenomenology, through how they orient their attention, through their mindfulness, through their conditioning, through their map of reality, how they construct metaphorically like the world, then all of a sudden you gain access to creating environments necessary to create the support necessary to create the capacity for you to heal. So I never applied that to your beautiful model before, but I would just throw that on at the end as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't really have too much to say other than, yeah, that's
Cool.
sounds good. Sounds about right.
Sweet.
Yeah. It's really interesting to just to see, like, when you're talking about I think a metaphor that I use, at least this is how I understand it, is like the train of thought. Like, if we believe a certain train of thought within our experience, like if we're putting that thought over our experience, and then that's creating our experience, depending on how much we believe in that train of thought, then that's what we feel. And I always say, it's like, if you believe a certain train of thought, then you step off the platform onto that train, and then that train takes you down to, platform crazy train, or platform
Real Clients Town, or whatever train you're on. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's like looking at it from the perspective that, sometimes I'll tell my clients, like, yes, we are the body. Yes, we have a body. Yes, we are emotions. Yes, we have emotions. Yes, we are thought. Yes, we have thought, but we're also like the consciousness in which all of that arises. And like, that's like, I see as like the ultimate grounding, is the consciousness in which all of that arises within. Is there any way, like, can you go beyond that? Like, that for me is like the next really interesting, I guess, like our whole physical world appear. I think in the yogic tradition, they talk about like the bindu, which is like the point of reality in which consciousness expresses itself. And I've had this experience twice where, like, it was like this, like the whole reality, like around me, physical sensation, emotion, thought, physical reality out there, where like all of that came into the screen of my awareness. And so I think in the yoga tradition, they call it the bindu, where like you actually have the experience of like the outside world, your thoughts, your emotions, your body, and things like this. So with that framework in mind, I guess my next question would be, like, is there anything beyond that, I guess? And I know we're getting really like esoteric, but at the same time, I think it's, it's a fun.
Is there anything beyond what? Beyond what? In your words, not in the yogic words.
Yeah, just, is there anything beyond the basis of like consciousness itself, like awareness itself? Or is that really like the foundation of it all? Like, body happens in my awareness, thought happens within my awareness, emotion happens within my awareness.
You mean, is there anything greater than that, than awareness?
Is there anything like do you think that's beyond that? Because,
like, God, is that what you mean?
I don't even know, man. I'm just asking a cool thought. I'm just
yeah.
What comes to mind.
No, that's cool. I'm not asking you because I think I'm asking you to kind of guide you into figuring it out, so that we could co-create this question and then create an answer. What I hear you saying, is there anything beyond? Is there anything beyond? It sounds like, is there anything beyond what I know, or am I almost at the end?
Yeah, like, is there anything else outside of that? Because like there's the physical experience that arises within the awareness. There's the physical sensations that are in the awareness. There's the emotions that are in the awareness. There's the thoughts that are in the awareness. And then all of those things formulate together to create an experience. But I know from some experiences that there's something beyond all of that.
Well, here's what I would say, what I think I hear you asking. Just because I'm experiencing it doesn't mean it's real or truth or absolute truth. And to believe that what I can experience is the totality of what is in existence is kind of crazy. Like, I used to say, I still would say it, if it was appropriate, like, just because we can reason doesn't mean there is one. Like, this idea that there's a reason is an idea, and ideas are human. Like, conceptualization doesn't require like what we can conceive to exist, or to be the limit of existence. So to me, it feels like very presumptive to be like, we've got it all. You know, what we can experience and access and philosophize, that's everything. It's kind of like physics being like, we've got the four forces, you know,
Right.
you know, that's all there are. It's like, okay, it's all you know of.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I said I was just that question because like like what like that's why I was asking. I was like, what's beyond that? Like, is there something beyond?
Well, I don't know, but I also what I believe is that well, all I know at the end of the day, I ground in my not knowing.
Yeah.
Right. Like I have if I have the certainty in anything, it's my uncertainty. That's where I ground my certainty in.
Yeah.
And that sounds kind of crazy. And like, but if you actually sit with it, you realize that like grounding in uncertainty means that like you're actually, you're okay with the fact that you don't know. And then you can relax and you be certain and you're still.
Yeah. The groundless ground that the Buddha talks about. I love that. I think at least that's how I'm hearing it. I think that's the best thing that we can do. I think that gives us security. I honestly, my thinking is that that's going to be because of how crazy the world is like, evolving right now. Like that's going to be the saving grace for a lot of humanity. It's like, as far as I know, and depending upon, you know, certain beliefs of alternative history, I don't know what your thoughts are on that or other people watching, but as far as I know, it seems to me that there's never been a time where humanity has been so forced to adapt as quickly as today. Or, you know, like with the internet, with technology, with immediate interconnectedness. If you're living in the modern world, things are changing quicker than ever before. So I think getting grounded into that uncertainty, I don't really think of a more powerful way of living.
Yeah, no, I agree. I said at the beginning of COVID, I said, I feel like hand sanitizer because my whole work for the last 10 years is helping people to create certainty despite circumstances. And now suddenly everybody's circumstance, they're like lost at sea. And I'm like, this is what I do. Like when this is where I thrive. So it's been a good year. You know, I'm blessed to have that. I'm not take that for granted, but I completely agree. And you know, my friend sent me this clip the other day that I love. He'd be a great guy to have on your podcast. James Tripp, by the way, he's got a cool YouTube channel. Genius thinker. But he sent me a clip from Game of Thrones. It's just this monologue. I'm watching Game of Thrones. I mentioned it twice, but like I know that's like done and dusted, but like I started it like just like,
right.
So I'm that guy. I'm that guy. I watched 24 like after all 12 seasons were done or whatever. So people were like, dude, what? Anyway, there's this monologue where like Littlefinger is saying like chaos is not a pit, chaos is a ladder. And like that's like, you know, my relation. It's not like I'm like, oh yeah, the world collapsed. Like, no, it's like I have emotion, and as I have the reaction of resistance inside my body. I have the judgment that comes up, but I also know that like that's my patterning meeting the chaos. And if I can surf this wave, not just not get wiped out by it, but surf it, then I can take everything that I do and I can actually bring it to more of the world. So I see this as a great opportunity. I mentioned for not just for me, but like for us, for the work that we do, right? It's like speaking to what you're saying, but even in a bigger way, it's like now's not just the saving grace, like now's the time. You know, Robert Keegan, the Harvard psychologist I mentioned earlier, you said sounded like you're familiar with him. He has a nice talk at the RSA, which maybe you can link below this for people. It's called The Further Reaches of Adult Development. It's just like a 20-minute talk he gave, but he talks about how this work of the evolution to the self-transforming mind, which is being done by therapists, coaches, spiritual communities, is probably the most important work being done in the world right now, because it's going to require that developmental shift in our psychology in order to meet the challenges of the world. And so I get in the chills just thinking about it right now, but I get a lot of purpose in my work when I see the world unfolding like it is, and I see people having a hard time and knowing without a shadow of a doubt, like this is the solution, like this is going to help you. When everybody's running around with like a chicken with their head cut off, when you can be the only person who's not freaking the F out and keep creating, it's like you become a resource for everybody around you.
I love that, JP. That's a great way. And I do think, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, like how we're connected to life in the sense that life is creating us, but we're also creating it, and going to that flow, and really just being like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but I do know what I'm doing, but like, I'm just
I know that I don't know.
Yeah.
So you can rest assured in that.
That's and stabilize in that, because that really is, I think, the most powerful with what's going on in humanity. Like, I think that's the most powerful. Those are going to be like that. That's where you need to, like, humanity, individuals need to evolve to that point, because if you want to thrive in the next world that's coming through.
Quickly too. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I just want to make an announcement. I put it up there. Guys, if you have any questions for JP and I, please feel free to bring them up, and we'll bring it onto the screen here. Do you want to take maybe one or two more questions about JP, and then we'll see what the audience comes up with. So I guess, like, with this bit, like when I look at a snapshot of the world, this is what I see. It's like, we're living like in the modern world. We're living like kings and queens. Amazon can fly drones of whatever we want pretty much through our windows. There's international travel that's pretty cheap. So you can create money in crazy ways, not crazy ways, but, way pretty more. Crazy. Yeah. Just not traditional.
Yeah.
Like, I think Bitcoin went up to like 40,000.
I keep kicking the shit out of myself. I sold all my Bitcoin like 2 years ago.
I sold mine in October. So I had one Bitcoin. I sold it in October.
I turned $3,000 into $30,000 and kept crypto, and then I got out, and I'm like just waiting to get back in, like as if it's going to go down like back to where it was before, like, But
I'm in the same boat, man. I get it. Yeah. But the point is like, the world is changing so quickly, and it's almost like it's just taking a snapshot from that perspective. Like, everything's becoming immediate. It seems like, I mean, we can connect with anyone around the world at any time. We can fly anything to us. We can pretty much go anywhere on a very, like, the amount of human experience you can have in 70 years, I think, is unheard of, as opposed to any other time on the planet.
Of course.
Irrespective of your belief in history or alternative history. All that being said, like, I guess, where do you see, JP, the future of human experience?
Oh, dude, I don't know. I mean, I'm flattered that you would ask me that, but like, I'm the furthest thing from an expert in so many things that would come into that question. But let me answer you. Let me answer with how I meet that inquiry myself as a dad. Right? Because the way that shows up for me is like, what is the world going to be that my kids live in? And I could try to concern myself with coming up with an answer for that, but it's going to be a rabbit hole, and I'm not an expert, right? And so instead, I actually look at, well, why am I asking that? And what I discovered when I asked why I was asking that, in the sense of my kids, it was like, because I want to make sure that they're okay. And so then when I don't know what's going to happen, faster and faster, crazier and crazier, what can I do? Well, I can focus on helping them to meet the chaos, to meet the uncertainty, to meet whatever unfolds in the most resourceful way possible. And that's my work as well. So it's not like I got to do that on the side. It's just like, I just bring everything that I do for them.
That's a great way to look at it, man. Yeah, I love that. And if you saw, what do you think is the best way? Maybe not way. That's not the right word. What do you think is the most powerful gift you could offer a human being?
Love. Just love in that moment, loving them. One of my things that I speak in the mornings is like, everybody that I meet leaves my presence feeling loved and loving themselves. My silent presence slows the beat of hearts. Even just my silent presence, if that can help them to relax, help them to feel loved, that's it.
Last question here, man, then we'll close up. How do you, I know I'm getting still technical here, how do you see love? How does that show up?
How do I see it? You're asking me like, what do I mean by love?
Yeah, like sometimes I'll ask this question, and I'll see in the spiritual awakening communities or things like this, at least how my mind sees it, is like people are like, oh, just love. But like for me, sometimes I think love can be, like the shaking, really calling a person out, being like, hey, like you got to get this going, you got to get this moving. And then other times it can be like just holding a person when they're having an anxiety.
I get it. There's all different forms, but here's the thing that matters to me, because it's easy to get caught up in those different forms and thinking one of them is love and one of them isn't and stuff. It's like there can be all those different forms, but the other person knows what love is. And so like, instead of like, what's the way or which form is the love? It's like, I could shake somebody and they could feel loved, and I could shake somebody and they could feel afraid. It's like, so what matters to me is the essence of it. And it's the cool thing about this is like the search for what the answer is like a complexity that's added on top of a truth that's pre-existing. Love was there first. And it's kind of like what's breathing specifically, it's like, dude, I mean, everybody knows what breathing is. The challenge is trying to put meaning on it. It's like, relax. And so it's enough of a signpost. And like, for me, it comes down to who am I with? And like, let's concern ourselves with getting to that thing that love is our best signpost for it. And even try to talk about it. Are you feeling love right now? That's still not even going to get you as close as just, am I feeling it in the presence of another person? Then guess what? They are too. I've never experienced being immersed in love and around somebody and having it not bleed into them. I've never experienced being around somebody who's immersed in love and whatever I'm feeling to be annihilated by that love. So I don't care what the words are, or the form is. I've been like literally choked by somebody and felt loved. I've been pushed around and felt love. I've been hugged, obviously, all the classic ones. So I've had every form and felt love, and have had all the same forms and not felt love. So we know, and I know you know that too. But so there it is.
It's beautiful, man. JP, thanks for doing this with me, man. It was a great time. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm really excited just to see what we both create till we die.
Thanks, man. So am I. Let's share with each other's communities about how they can be in touch with us, because I know you have something to share with people too, and so do I. So you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. If anyone wants to check it out, I got my free coaches course there below in the description. Got the Art of Relationship, Communication, and Transformational Leadership class coming up in March. All the details are there below.
Sweet. JP. Yeah, I've got a training I call Being a Client Magnet. It's about an hour long. And in it, I share like the 5 core ideas, principles, key kind of insights that I've gathered around being what I call being a client magnet. So not creating like a marketing magnet, but actually being somebody. The metaphor I use is kind of tongue in cheek, but it's like, sometimes I feel like I could walk through a graveyard and bodies would rise out of the ground and become coaching clients. It's not like, oh, pat myself on the back. It's not about that. It's about like, if I put all my attention on who do I need to be for everybody I meet to want to be coached, that's been my curiosity and interest. That's what I help my clients to do. So I've taken like the 5 major things that help that to occur, and I put that in the training, so it's free. They can grab it at the link.
That's awesome. That's a great metaphor. I love that.
Cool.
Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. JP, thanks for being here, man. It really was an honor and a delight. And guys, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to either of us. We're wishing you the best. All love.
Much love. Thanks, Jared.
Thanks,
See you guys.